Hello everyone, Xeno What If here. Bring in part 6 of the Transformers Were in My Hero Academia. Link in the description of the fanfiction of this What If. Listen here YouTube. I do not own anything and this is not a scam. Chapter 11, The USJ, Part 1. Special Agent William J. Fowler considered himself to be a man with strong values, one who had joined the United States military to serve his country when he was a younger man and proved himself on the battlefield during some of the more intense struggles that heroes and villains have had over the years. Sure, the emergence of quirks made the armed forces somewhat less needed, but when they were, it was when some serious shit was going down. Bill couldn't count the number of times that he had seen conflicts between heroes and villains grow so out of hand that it started a small war, and that is where the armed forces came into play. In a world full of superpowered beings, the heroes sometimes still needed backup to face off against the kind of villains that emerged. A part of Fowler was still shaken from the most recent event that happened nearly 5 years ago. But the special agent couldn't let those thoughts cloud his mind now. His days serving in the armed forces were long behind him, and now, he found himself working in a completely different the US government. The secretive Sector 7 branch. When he had first heard of this branch, which as it happened was actually spread out across most of the world and not just the US, he thought he had gotten into something utterly crazy. A secret government agency, that dealt with extraterrestrial threats and technology. He had almost told the agent that assigned him to this place that he was out of his goddamn mind, but then he saw their Hoover Dam headquarters and he hadn't spoken an ill word since. The things he had seen there were utterly baffling, to say the least. But what they had over in the Hoover Dam practically paled in comparison to what was hidden beneath Tokuyama Dam here in Japan, which was where he was right now. If what was down there ever busted out, I don't know what could happen. The African-American man was currently power walking through the halls of the secret Sector 7 facility inside the dam with a very serious expression on his face, keeping his focus even as fellow Sector 7 members greeted him. He was going to a certain man's office, one who would probably be very interested in the information he had to share. Finally, Fowler made it to his destination, a door with the name, Burns, engraved on a plate next to it. He gave the door a knock and he heard a masculine voice call out. "Come in." Bill opened the door and was immediately met with a Caucasian man in his late 40s, his brown styled into a buzz cut. He was sitting behind a desk and writing down on some important-looking papers before his blue eyes shifted up to him, a greeting smile coming to his face. "Ah, Bill. Good to see." He was cut off when Fowler set a folder full of top-secret files on his desk, the man's smile disappearing. "You. Why do I get the feeling you're not here for a casual chat?" "Not today, Jacob," Fowler answered as he pulled up a chair and leaned forward intently, placing his elbows to his knees for support. "We've got a situation. And lemme tell ya, this is gonna blow your damn mind." Jacob Burns rolled his eyes while reaching for the folder. "I'll be the judge of that, Bill. Lemme guess, another bogus UFO sighting." "Not so. A couple of our own agents up in northern Hokkaido spotted something that'll pique your interest," Fowler explained. "I doubt that, Bill," Jacob said as he opened the folder, not even paying attention for a few moments. "I mean, seriously, I doubt that we're just gonna magically have something interesting when nothing's happened for almost 300 years. But then, he cut himself off again, this time his voice being caught in his throat as his eyes widened at what he saw in the folder. A grin came to Fowler's face as he raised a brow to him. "So, interested now, hot shot." Jacob's jaw dropped at what he was seeing. It was a picture of two large, robotic beings, one red and black while the other was blue and black. They were both standing outside of one of Sector 7's hidden compounds, the place burning up in flames. Jacob flipped through the pictures and saw the robots converting into two armored vehicles before speeding off into the early morning, leaving him to let out an apprehensive breath. "When were these taken?" "A couple hours ago, about 6:30. Fowler answered, reaching over to tap a finger to the pictures. These were taken from the only security camera that was still operational at the site. These NBEs crashed into it, scanned two of our vehicles and then drove off. Our two guards there said that they mentioned something about a B-127. "Huh, wow," Jacob said before setting the folder down, slumping into his chair in disbelief. He glanced back up to Fowler and asked, "Bill, do you know what this means?" Fowler gave him a nod. "I do, and I'm sure you do as well." He gestured over to a picture on the wall. It appeared to be one of Jacob, but it was actually very old. After all, this is the day that your great-grandfather had hoped would come. Jacob pursed his lips and stood up, stepping over to the picture of his great-grandfather. Jack Burns. People had told him that he was the spitting image of Jack right from the time he had turned 15, and it was definitely hard to argue with them. The only thing that was really missing was the long scar that went from Jack's right temple all the way down to his chin, but Jacob wasn't about to go that far. Besides, if the stories he heard from his family were true, then he didn't want to go through the same ordeal that his grandpa Jack had gone through to get that scar. "Do you think this has anything to do with NBE-1? "More than likely," Fowler answered as he stood next to Jacob. "Ever since your grandfather's first close encounter with NBEs 1 and 2, along with good ol' NBE-3, we've been expecting this day to come. And now, it seems we've finally gotten our wish." The man trailed off before eyeing Jacob. "And that's another thing, actually, has NBE-3's pod reacted at all since this morning?" Jacob faced Fowler and shook his head. "No, the big bot's still very much on ice. No irregularities there." "Good, we were afraid otherwise with the arrival of those two." Fowler's brows furrowed as he made his way back to the desk, picking up the envelope. "Can't take any chances, after all. For all we know, they could have sent a signal that'd activate the pod. Anyway, after I got the call earlier this morning, I contacted the Pentagon about it. Please tell me that you haven't asked them to dispatch everything they have." "Relax, I told them to remain on standby if anything happens," Fowler said with a wave of his hand. "That said, we'll need to mobilize our forces as quick as we can if we want to intercept them. Our boys up north heard that they pinpointed this B-127, down south, most likely near Shizuoka." Jacob's eyebrows shot up. "That's only a couple hours from here." He went to his personal locker to grab his gear while he was still talking. "I'll gather up Unit E and we'll be out of here in no time." However, he paused and he craned his head around. Just one last question. Simmons doesn't know about this, does he?" Fowler let out a scoffing laugh. "Huh, hell no. I made damn sure that I got to the phone before he did. That crazy man ain't in on this one." He saw Burns give out a sigh of relief, though Fowler's expression returned to one of seriousness. "That said, Dr. Powell will be accompanying us on this one. He's very eager to see the aliens himself." The other agent sighed and rolled his eyes once again, continuing to put on his gear. "Of course he is. The man's practically euphoric when it comes to alien technology. He kinda creeps me out a bit. I'm no fan of him either, but General Whalen was insistent." Fowler shrugged. "And what the boss man says goes." He stepped over and gave Jacob a pat on the back. "But hey, look at it this way, you'll get to do something that your great-grandfather only wishes he could have done." "Hey, good point there. Thought I'm pretty sure old man Jack would have wanted to kill the bots without any remorse if he were still around today." He glanced over to the picture of his great-grandfather on the wall, the man's unsmiling scowl staring right back at him. After getting in the middle of that fight between NBE-1 and 2, he was bitter to his dying days that he couldn't get his hands on any more of those giant alien robots. "I can only imagine," Fowler said as he headed toward the door, opening it up before stepping through it. "I'll meet you in Unit E in the loading bay at 0900, alright, soldier." Jacob gave a salute and straightened himself out. "Yes sir." Fowler saluted back before heading out of the room, leaving Jacob to himself. The man let out a sigh as he glanced back over to the picture, crossing his arms in contemplation. "Well, great-granddad, guess things are about to get interesting." He went over and shut his locker, muttering to himself, "Only took 300 years." Izuku had to admit, he was actually rather excited for today's lesson, rescue operations. And thankfully, that meant it didn't involve actual combat this time, so he didn't have to worry about getting beat up. Though that didn't mean he was exempt from getting hurt on this little excursion either, since they'd be dealing with simulated disasters. But still, he'd take having to deal with those over getting blown up by Kachan any day. Also, before they were scheduled to leave, Mr. Aizawa had told them that while they could don their costumes, he also warned that they could also possibly be a hindrance since not everyone was used to them yet. So, as a result, almost everyone was leaving a piece of their costume behind. For example, Mina wasn't wearing her mask and neither was Katsuki, the explosive blonde, also leaving one of his grenade gauntlets behind. Jiro wasn't wearing his headpiece or sleeves, Tsuyu Asui didn't have her goggles, etc. And the same went for Kyoka, Ochako and Keita, the trio of girls all walking up to Izuku at that moment. Keita had left her black leather jacket behind while Ochako had done the same with her helmet. And as for Kyoka, the girl still had her wrist-mounted speakers and her speaker boots, but chose to leave her headphones behind, seeing no use for them in a rescue operation. "Yo, Izuku," she called out, garnering his attention. "Gotta say, you're looking less green." Izuku smiled sheepishly while Ochako piped up as well. "Hey, yeah, you're in your PE clothes. Where's your costume at?" Indeed, Izuku was only wearing his blue, red and white PE clothes, with a couple new additions, a couple shoulder, knee and elbow pads, and an entirely black face mask that resembled his first one, but without the teeth. Well, you saw what happened to it during combat training." Izuku laughed nervously. It was completely trashed. I'm still waiting for Hatsume T to finish the upgrades she has plans for it." He thought back to when he had mentioned that fact to the pink-haired inventor the other day, and she was all too quick to jump on the upgrade train. He still remembered what she had said about it, too. "When I get done with your costume, you won't even be able to recognize it," Mei had said with her usual enthusiasm. "I'm gonna give you the best babies that you're ever gonna have, muscles." Izuku couldn't help but sweat a little at that thought. And that's kinda what worries me. "Oh yeah, I forgot you and Jiro had a friend in the support course." Keita piped up with a grin. "Must be nice to know someone who can upgrade your suits with such cool stuff." "Well, yeah, depending on if they explode or not," Kyoka murmured to herself. As much as she liked Mei as a friend, she still had to admit, her tendency to make things that go boom was probably unrivaled. All of a sudden, a loud whistle suddenly rang out through the campus, causing Kyoka to grab her jacks and cringe in pain. "Gah, what the hell?" Everyone's eye darted over to Tenya, the newly appointed class rep dressed in most of his hero costume aside from his helmet. He was the one blowing into the whistle, waving his hand around stiffly toward the bus that would take them to their destination. "Gather round, everyone. Using your student numbers, form 2 neat lines so that we may load the bus efficiently." He continued to blow into the whistle, but was immediately cut off when Izuku called out to him. "Aida." The blue-haired young man stopped and focused onto Izuku, who didn't seem too happy. The green bean had moved over next to Kyoka and trying to help her relax as she continued to hold her jacks, her ears still ringing from the whistle. "Iida, I respect your authority as class rep, but see, could you please not use the whistle?" Iida's eyes widened in concern and he immediately bowed apologetically. My apologies, Midoriya. And I am so very sorry, Jiro. I promise that this will not happen again." "Yeah, thanks," Jiro said with a heavy sigh, rubbing her jacks to try and relieve some of the pain. "Sometimes, I hate how sensitive my hearing is." She gave a small smile over to Izuku and bumped him with her elbow. "But thanks, Mop Top, you've once again proven to be a freaking cinnamon roll." Izuku blushed profusely and tapped his fingers together. Oh, I don't know about that." Come on, don't be so modest," Keita said with a pat on the back. "You're like a little puppy. It's hard to hate ya, well, aside from Bakugo, but he's a jackass." "What did you say, lizard lips?" Katsuki shouted indignantly as he boarded the bus. "You heard me, Baku breath," Keita snapped back. Ochako slid up and gave a nervous smile. Do you think we can all just get on the bus now?" After everyone got on the bus, Iida sat down and slumped forward, feeling utterly defeated. As it happened, the bus had a more open layout than he had thought, with 2 large benches situated near the midsection of the vehicle while a bunch of smaller seats were lined up near the back end like usual, leaving everyone scattered about. Ochako was sitting with Momo near the back while Izuku, Kyoka, Tenya, Keita and a whole slew of other students were sitting on the benches. Needless to say, Tenya was less than pleased. "Bus's open layout ruined my boarding strategy." Kyoka couldn't help but smirk as she plugged one of her jacks into her phone. "Hey, That's pretty obvious. Think of this as karma for the whistle thing earlier. But I apologized, Tenya exclaimed, much to the class's amusement. If we're pointing out the obvious, then there's something I wanna say. Tsuyu Asui piped up, the green-clad girl having seated next to Izuku. She turned to her fellow greenette and addressed him. About you, actually. Izuku immediately grew nervous. Even if a majority of his friend group consisted of girls, he knew that a part of him would still be anxious about talking to women. That's just how his brain worked. Admittedly, he knew some things about Asui, like the fact that her quirk gave her the attributes of a frog, along with the fact that she was rather blunt, but otherwise that was about it. Oh, really? What is it, Asui? Without missing a beat, Tsuyu said, I told you to call me Su. Ribbit. Izuku flinched a bit, admittedly having forgotten about that. However, Tsuyu simply gave him a smile and asked curiously, that power of yours, isn't it a little like All Might's? Both Izuku and Kyoka stiffened up at the question. Oh no, Kyoka thought to herself. Of course it'd be Su who put 2 and 2 together. She's really observant like that. Wait. The more Kyoka thought about it, the more she realized that Izuku's quirk really was a lot like All Might's. And the fact that All Might was also Izuku's mentor, it made things all the stranger, especially since Izuku had thought he was quirkless before his power emerged. Did All Might somehow sense that Izuku's dormant quirk was similar to his and that's why he took him on? Or, could it be something else? Meanwhile, Izuku had fallen into one of his usual mumblings as he tried to answer Su's question. Really? I never really noticed that before, if I'm being honest with you. Guess it is kinda as similar in AW way, though I do think mine is slightly different, ouch. Green bean, you're muttering again. Kyoka said as she pulled her other jack away from her friend's shoulder. As much as she wanted to speculate on Izuku's quirk, she knew that now wasn't exactly the time, especially if she wanted to keep the rest of the class's suspicions down. But he does have a point, Su. Eijiro piped up, the spiky redhead sending a smile down to Su. You're forgetting that Midoriya's quirk has a pretty bad backlash while All Might's doesn't. That's a pretty big difference. He glanced back up to Izuku, his smile still present. Still, I bet it's awesome to have an augmenting type quirk. You can do a ton of cool and flashy stuff. Eijiro hardened his arm up, the limb becoming sharp and jagged. I mean, mine can destroy bad guys, sure, but it doesn't really look all that impressive. However, Izuku beamed at the hardened limb with excitement. Oh, no way. I think it's awesome, Kirishima. I can definitely say that you're pro-material with a quirk like that. No doubt about it, dude. Keita agreed with a thumbs up. That power has its uses and it's cool as hell. Eijiro couldn't help but smile sheepishly. You think? Seems like I'd be more popular with a flashier power. Across from them on the other bench, Yuga Aoyama was quick to interject. My naval laser has both panache and strength, the flamboyant blonde boasted as his eyes practically glimmered. A most magnifique combination. Next to him sat Mina, the horned, pink girl giving Yuga a sympathetic smile as she placed a hand on his shoulder. Yeah, but it totally sucks if it gives you a stomachache after using it too much. Yuga's confident expression slightly faltered at that, his head lowering in shame. Speaking of quirks, I've been meaning to ask, Ochako piped up next, her attention going over to Keita. How exactly does your quirk work again, Keita? You said something about eating fossils in order to copy dinosaur parts, so. Whoa, seriously. Eijiro's eyes widened in shock, with everyone's attention going to Keita as well. How the hell do you get dino fossils for your quirk, Kiryu? Those are really expensive, aren't they? Keita shifted her eyes around before giving a nervous laugh. Why yeah, they are, but it helps that I've got parents with some pretty cool jobs. Everyone stared at her in confusion before she took out her cell phone, pulling up a picture that she showed the entire class. It appeared to be one of herself, only much younger at about 5, maybe 6 years of age. With her were 2 people, a woman with dark hair and sharp teeth, and a man with gray skin, both of whom were in khaki adventure gear while in the middle of a desert. See, these are my parents, and they also happen to be paleontologists. All at once, the class clamored excitedly. Whoa, seriously. That's so cool. Kiryu, your parents dig up fossils. Yep, that's right. Keita nodded. Though sometimes, some skeletons aren't exactly in the best of shape when they're dug up. Sometimes bones can be broken, and the museums are often the ones that make artificial replacements for those ones. She glanced off to the side with a grin. Usually, the broken bone is left as is and stored down in the museum for study, but once my quirk emerged and my parents figured out how it worked, they'd often buy the bones themselves so that I could nibble on them. Your parents bought you priceless broken fossils so you can snack on them. Kyoka exclaimed. That's crazy. Well, not the big ones, if that's what you're thinking. Keita elaborated. Usually it's a claw, a horn or even a tooth. I haven't eaten a whole femur or anything. Plus, I only have to eat the fossil once and then I have that dino's DNA permanently. Still, that is quite impressive. Momo added. My father paid a lofty price for the single Tyrannosaurus skeleton in our greenhouse, so I know how much those cost. All at once, everyone's slack-jawed attention went to Momo, the raven-haired girl shifting her eyes around to all of them in confusion. What? Eijiro shook his head and cleared his throat. Ahem, well anyways, back on topic, if there's anyone with pro-level quirks in this class, the redhead turned his head over to a certain ashen blonde and half-red half-white-haired boy who seemed to be resting his eyes. It's Bakugo and Todoroki. Katsuki merely scoffed at the compliment while Todoroki let out an indifferent, not bothering to open his eyes. Sue wore a cheeky smile as she entered the conversation again. Yeah, but Bakugo will probably never be popular if he's always angry all the time. Ribbit. Katsuki's eyes snapped open angrily and Keita threw her head back with a laugh. HA. The shade. That's it. I'll kick both your asses. The ashen blonde roared. Further toward the back of the bus, Denki decided to add his 2 cents. You know, it's pretty much only been a week since we've met you and we already know that your personality is basically dog crap mixed with garbage. He smirked as he pointed to Katsuki. Really not hero material if you ask me. The fuck did you say, you walking battery? Katsuki shouted once again. Okay, Kaminari, you get a point for that one. Kyoka thought to herself with a smirk. For as much as she thought the electric blonde was a total doof, she had to admit, he had his moments. However, her focus was then brought back to Izuku, who had his head placed between his hands as he stared down at the floor. You okay there, pine tree? I can't believe what I'm hearing. Izuku muttered. After all this time, Kachan is the one being teased in UA. His eyes began darting around in a panic. My whole world's been turned upside down. I'm in the middle of a paradigm shift. Kyoka draped an arm around him and let out a small chuckle, rubbing his back reassuringly. Relax, broccoli boy, you're okay. Trust me, seeing stuff like this happen has been a long time coming. Izuku lifted his head up and locked eyes with Kyoka, who gave him a wink. Think of this as the start of his karma for having bullied you all those years. In her mind, she added, and with any luck, it'll come back to bite him even more. Well, I guess that is one way to look at it. Izuku trailed off, blushing at the fact that Kyoka was still rubbing comforting circles on his back. It felt nice, almost as if her hand were an anchor that was keeping him from freaking out. He smiled to her and let out a sigh. Thank you, Kyoka. I needed that. No prob. Kyoka grinned as the bus came to a halt, signaling for all of them to get up. Now come on, with any luck, this lesson will be a lot less chaotic than combat training. Dear God, I hate it when I'm wrong. Kyoka thought to herself as she felt her and Izuku emerge from the portal cloud thing that they and a whole bunch of other students had been sucked into. Mere minutes after they had arrived at the unforeseen simulation joint, or USJ for short, and had been greeted by the space hero, 13, things started to go completely wrong. Almost immediately, the power to the USJ was cut and a dark, foggy portal appeared near the very center of the facility, out of which came a whole bunch of real, genuine villains. Naturally, pretty much everyone was scared, especially since the 3 who seemed to be leading this battalion were scary as hell. One of the 3 leaders was actually the portal itself, which had reshaped into a tall figure that had a metal brace in the middle of it, its piercing yellow eyes appearing from its dark, foggy void. Aizawa had told 13 to get the entire class to safety while he engaged the thugs, but then the void-like villain had teleported to the class just as they were about to reach the door. The Void villain then introduced his group as the League of Villains, and they were apparently looking for All Might, so they could kill him. Just as the villain was talking, Kyoka had seen 13 about to activate her quirk, Black Hole, to try and get rid of him, but then Katsuki and Eijiro had decided to go in all gung-ho and try to attack the bad guy head-on. As Kyoka had expected, it didn't work, and in the end, the Void villain had used his quirk to engulf almost everyone in a warp gate, sending them to random places across the USJ. And that's where Kyoka found herself now, falling down onto the ground from a warp gate. However, if there was one thing Kyoka was happy about this whole situation, it was that Izuku had grabbed a hold of her the moment they were sent through the warp gate, meaning that she thankfully still had him with her. Dear God, I sound so freaking cheesy right now. The duo fell out of the warp gate and fell down to the rocky ground below, with Izuku rolling himself around in midair so that he would be taking the brunt of the impact. Gah! The green-haired teen landed right on his back with Kyoka on his chest, wincing as his teeth clenched hard. Oh okay, that wasn't pleasant. Izuku! Kyoka shouted, concern written all across her facial features. Are you okay? Gah, why the hell did you do that? Izuku let out a shaky breath, smiling up to Kyoka in relief. To make sure that you were okay. I didn't want to be the one landing on you, you know. Kyoka's eyes widened and a blush came to her face, her eyes moving away sheepishly. Well, thank you. That means a lot, but you still didn't have to. Watch out. The duo's eyes widened and Kyoka rolled herself over to look up, getting off of Izuku in the process. However, a split second later, she saw a certain figure in red come crashing down onto Izuku in her place, and immediately, Kyoka was regretting rolling off of Izuku. Oh my goodness. Momo exclaimed with a worried face. I am so sorry, Midoriya. You're not hurt, are you? No, Midoriya wasn't hurt, but he was feeling very faint. Why? Because with the way Momo landed on him, her chest was right up against his, and given her costume, it was very hard not to notice her generous assets. In 2 seconds, Izuku's eyes rolled into the back of his head and he fainted, his face beat red as steam wafted from his face. Ah! Momo screamed again, confused as to what had happened. Midoriya. Are you alright? What happened? Kyoka's brow couldn't help but twitch in irritation. Gee, what do you think happened? However, at the sounds of growling and evil chuckling reaching her enhanced hearing, Kyoka sprang up and readied herself for combat. Heads up, we've got company. And we need to protect Izuku. Oh, right. Momo was snapped back to her senses and stood up, her elbow and thigh glowing as she used her quirk. From out of her elbow, she pulled out a long, metal staff, while from her thigh, a sword handle suddenly came out. Quick, arm yourself. Gotcha. Kyoka reached down and grabbed the handle, producing a katana that she wielded in 2 hands. Anime, don't fail me now. All at once, multiple bad guys started coming at them from all around, ones that either seemed completely normal or dressed in odd costumes. Some of them had quirks that made their bodies look different while others wielded weapons of their own, but all the same, Kyoka and Momo fought them off, slicing and slashing at them as they drew near. Hey, girlies! Kyoka's attention was drawn to a random villain who had a really stretchy arm, the hand of which was about to throw a boulder at them. Try slashing your way through this. Challenge accepted, Kyoka said before plugging one of her jacks into her boot, the speakers instantly letting out a huge sonic blast that crushed the boulder into several pieces. At that moment, though, Kyoka saw another bad guy with knives in his hands jump up and toward her, at which point, Momo came in and created a net to throw at him. The net caught the knife guy and sent him tumbling into the arm guy, both of them getting caught up in Kyoka's soundwave attack. Without taking her concentration off the battle, Momo said to Kyoka, "You're lucky that worked so well." The perplet pursed her lips before going back on the offensive. I'm sorry, next time I'll ask before saving our butts. As she continued to blast her sound waves out at the other bad guys, plugging her other jack into one of her wrist-mounted speakers for some added power, she briefly glanced down to Izuku, who was still out cold. Damn it, Izuku, can't you wake up from your nap sooner? We're sitting ducks out here. At that moment, Momo's eyes widened and an idea came to her head. Wait, I have an idea. Momo left the battle and plugged her nose with one hand before creating a small stick of some sort of substance in her hand. This should wake him up. The raven-haired girl put the substance up near Izuku's nose and instantly, the green-haired boy's eyes snapped open, his body snapping up into a seated position. W, what happened? What's going on? W, where are we? Gah. Without warning, Kyoka pulled Izuku up and all three of them began running off to the other end of the zone that they were in, running past several mountainous structures as they were chased by the villains. Oh, so this isn't a bad dream. Nope, it's real. Kyoka answered. Welcome back to the waking world, celery stick. The punk rocker eyed Momo curiously. What the heck did you use on him, anyway? Momo held up the stick of unidentifiable substance before throwing it away. Smelling salts. I've seen it work in the movies. Kyoka couldn't help but smirk. Hey, well you're lucky that worked out so well. Alright, I can take the hint. Momo smiled back before her eyes snapped back up, her eyebrows rising at what was in front of them. Stop. Dead end. The trio slid to a halt as they reached the wall of the USJ, all three of them breathing hard before the sounds of evil chuckling brought their attention back to their pursuers. As the villains closed in, Momo glanced over to Izuku and Kyoka. Any ideas? Well, I could use my quirk, but I'd end up breaking my bones again. Izuku muttered. Kyoka glanced up, seeing a bunch of precarious, overhanging rocks. And if I use mine, I think we're all gonna be crushed. Damn it, we literally walked right between a rock and a hard place. But then, an idea came to her mind. Hold on, Izuku, we still have Hatsume's tracers, right? Izuku gasped while Momo tilted her head, seeing the duo produced small, sphere-shaped objects from their person. Why yeah, we do. Maybe we could use them to contact some help, but then that would mean. Oh, right. Kyoka shifted her gaze back to Momo, giving her a serious face. Yaoyorozu, I know we don't exactly know each other all that well, but we need you to keep a promise. I don't understand. Momo said, still completely baffled by what they're talking about. But if whatever you have planned can get us out of this situation, then very well. Kyoka nodded to her. Great. That's good to hear. She then nodded to Izuku as well and both of them pressed the buttons on their tracers, causing them to start beeping and blinking their lights. Because with the kinda help we're getting, you'll understand why we might need you to keep this secret. UA. Campus, 20 minutes earlier. Bumblebee had to admit, he wasn't expecting the surprise he was greeted with early this morning. The moment he drove out of All Might's garage, the #1 hero was there to greet him with a gift straight from Principal Nezu, a special UA entry pass. Needless to say, the yellow mech was utterly shocked and in disbelief, but Toshinori was quick to reassure him that it was indeed quite real. Since you're technically my intern, Nezu thought it would be appropriate for you to have clearance to get into UA, the walking skeleton of a man had said as he rubbed the back of his head. I mean, I did technically bring you into the school grounds the other day without clearance, and some of the other teachers didn't exactly appreciate that. Breakin' the rules. Bumblebee had said through his radio. Toshinori couldn't help but grin a little bit. Hey, yeah, right. He pointed to the pass in Bumblebee's hand. So, Nezu has entrusted you with this pass. It'll allow you access to the campus, so think of it as a get out of jail free card. You get to drive around campus instead of being stuck in the parking lot all day, and neither of us get in trouble for it. Sound good? It sounded really good, in fact. It was after that when Bumblebee started appreciating Principal Nezu knowing his secret, because now he could actually be preoccupied with something instead of just sitting in the parking lot waiting for Izuku and Kyoka to get out of school. And that's exactly what B was doing now, all while basking in the serene forest that surrounded the school grounds. Just another day in paradise. The disguised yellow mech said through his radio as his holoform laid back in the grass, making sure that he and his vehicle mode were obscured by enough foliage so that no one could see him, just in case. But thankfully, no one seemed to be around at the moment, and there didn't seem to be any security cams around the forested area, so he was pretty certain he was in the clear. However, it was then that his audio receptors began to pick up a faint noise coming from up overhead, causing him to open his eyes. Bumblebee sat up and peered up through the trees above him, staring at the bright blue sky. High up in the clouds, he could see what appeared to be a red and black jet, one that was beginning to take a nosedive, right toward him. Bumblebee's eyes widened and his holoform disappeared, his vehicle mode driving away as fast as possible before the aircraft crashed right into him. But then, much to his bafflement, the jet suddenly pulled up, its VTOL fans repositioning themselves so that it was hovering in place. The jet then did a U-turn and began tailing Bumblebee, making the disguised bot worry even more. Was whoever was in that jet actually after him? Not good. Not good at all. The disguised robot put his pedal to the metal and revved through the forested area, not caring that the dirt path he was going down was uneven to the point where he ended up going off the ground a few times. All that mattered to him was getting away from whoever was in that jet. But then, came the shock of a lifetime. Wait, stop. Those two words made Bumblebee's inner mechanisms all do a flip. That jet just talked to him. Not a person inside the jet, but the jet itself. And she sounded desperate. The VTOL aircraft increased its speed as Bumblebee skidded to a halt, the jet passing straight over him before flying straight up. Then, once again surprising Bumblebee, the jet began to transform. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. All at once, the rear part of the jet's fuselage transformed into a pair of legs, with the robot's arms folding out from its undercarriage. The wings situated themselves onto her back while the nosecone and cockpit folded up between her shoulder blades, allowing her head to emerge from her now fully formed torso. In the end, standing before Bumblebee was a red and black robot with some blue detailing, mainly on her chest and kneecaps. But her face was one that Bumblebee actually recognized. His memory went back to a month ago, when All Might had shown him his geisha statue. This was her. This was the bot who he had seen flash in his memory all those weeks ago. Her stark white face and decorated black and gold helm were all too recognizable to him, but unfortunately, her name still escaped him. However, from the smile that she was wearing, it was all too evident that she recognized him as well. I knew it. B-127, I knew it was you. As she began approaching him, Bumblebee decided that it was probably in his best interest to not deny that, seeing as she was now probably the biggest asset he had to figuring out just who he really was. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Bumblebee transformed into robot mode, and looked up at her. Wow, that was different. All this time of having to set his sights down onto his friends, he didn't expect to actually come up short among his own race. His optics were about level to the femme's midriff, and that just made it all the more awkward. Fortunately, the fembot didn't see it that way as she ran up to him and gave him a hug, laughing all the while. Haha, I can't believe it. I actually found you before the cons could. That statement served to effectively confuse Bumblebee even more, but not as much as what came next. Oh, that reminds me, the femme pulled out of the embrace and knelt down near Bee's foot, her hand going to the red insignia on it. Let's mask your signal so that they can't find you. She touched the red face and it dimmed ever so slightly, making Bumblebee raise an eyelid. Meanwhile, somewhere up north. What? Shatter exclaimed as she suddenly skidded to a halt on the back road that she and Dropkick were driving on, transforming into robot mode in the process. No. This is impossible. Dropkick pulled to a stop and transformed as well, giving Shatter a questioning face. What are you talking about? What's going on? Shatter clenched her metal teeth in frustration. B-127's signal, it's gone. What? You're kiddin'. Dropkick began using his own scanners as well, now being more effective since they were actually closer to where B-127 was. Sure enough, he was now off the radar. Scrap. What in the pit is going on? Nothing's interfering with our scanners, so, Dropkick's optics widened and he went back to Shatter. You don't think something actually managed to take him offline, do ya? No, there's close to nothing on this planet that could harm him, at least I'm fairly certain of that. Shatter put a hand to her chin in thought. While many the people of this planet do have powerful abilities, I am certain that the chances of B-127 running afoul of them is few and far between. As a scout, he is trained to keep himself hidden, after all. She placed her hands on her hips as she went on. The more likely explanation is that he's somehow found a way to mask his signal from us. Dropkick threw his hands up. Well, that's just great. Now how are we supposed to, wait? The blue Decepticon cut himself off when he heard something beginning to approach them from the sky, making his head crane upward. I think we've got company. Shatter's optics moved to the sky and she was immediately met with a sight that made her irises furrow curiously. Flying overhead were two black military aircraft, a helicopter with a single rotor, and a winged helicopter with large VTOL fans on each wing. Interestingly, both aircraft had a logo on them that Shatter recognized, an S7 inches insignia in the shape of a shield. How interesting. Those craft seem to be affiliated with the compound where we landed. Okay, so, why aren't they firing on us? Dropkick asked as the two military crafts continued to hover overhead for a short while. It was at that point where Dropkick took out his double-barreled hand cannon, ready to shoot them out of the sky. Alright, if these flies don't wanna fire, then I'll just... Wait. Shatter put a hand to the weapon, lowering it before pointing up at the aircraft. The two helicopters were flying off down the street, leaving the two bots behind. They aren't being hostile, so I say we shouldn't either. Let's follow them and see where they led us. It could be a trap. Dropkick pointed out. Indeed, it could. But it could also provide an opportunity. Shatter said with a sinister smile, her optics focusing onto the VTOL helicopter to scan it for herself. With B-127's signal now gone, we have to take all of the opportunities we can, after all. Dropkick shrugged before focusing onto the other helicopter, scanning it for himself as well. Well, fine. If you say so, partner. With that, the red and blue Decepticon duo transformed back into their armored vehicle modes and drove after the two aircraft, both of them curious as to how this would all play out. Back in the woods around UA. Hi, the winged femme breathed a sigh of relief. Ha, you have absolutely no idea how happy I am to see you, B-127, she said with a smile, having knelt down so that she and B were at eye level. We've been searching for you in Prime for close to 300 solar cycles. How in the world have you been on this planet for so long but never managed to contact us? Bumblebee tilted his head in confusion, placing a hand to his helm as his optics shifted to the side. This motion immediately caught the femme's attention. Is everything okay? ZRKT, one question, ZRKT, who are you? Bumblebee asked through his radio. What do you mean, who am I? I'm Windblade. The femme, whom B now knew as Windblade, countered. You must remember me, right? We were best friends back on Cybertron, unless, Windblade's optics grew sad as she continued. Your memory circuits, you can't remember anything, can you? Bumblebee lowered his head and let out a sad buzz, and then Windblade gasped, only now realizing that he wasn't actually talking. And your voice. What happened to your voice? ZRKT, I can't remember. B put it simply, shaking his head. ZRKT, ever since, ZRKT, I woke up. ZRKT, everything's been a blur. Windblade shifted her optics down, going over what might have happened. You must have been knocked into stasis lock somehow, and judging by how your vocal processor isn't working, I think it's safe to say that you must have been heavily damaged when it happened. She furrowed her irises a bit. If that's the case then, how'd you wake up? ZRKT, my friends, ZRKT, fixed me. The city speaker couldn't help but blink at that. Your friends. B moved his hand down, keeping it level just a few feet above the ground. Windblade's lips parted as she realized what he must have been talking about. Wait, did you make contact with the indigenous life forms here? Bumblebee jabbed a thumb to his chest. ZRKT, they found me, ZRKT, and helped me out. ZRKT, they helped keep me, ZRKT, hidden from others. I see, so that means that at least a few of these organic life forms know about your presence here. Windblade pursed her lips and thought to herself, this is gonna make things a bit harder, but I think I'll manage. She extended a hand to Bumblebee. Well, okay, do you remember anything at all? Maybe some bits and pieces. Bumblebee's optics widened and he nodded enthusiastically. ZRKT, yes, ZKRT, names. Names are a good start, which ones do you remember? ZRKT, Prime, ZRKT, Mega, ZRKT, Tron, ZRKT, C. B answered. Windblade wagged her finger to B in approval. Okay, 2 out of 3 of those names are good ones to remember. Wish you didn't really remember Megatron, but we'll take what we can get. She placed her hands on B's shoulders. B, do you know where Prime is now? The yellow mech blinked before bending over and pressing the red face on his foot, bringing up the holographic message that he had grown all too familiar with. Windblade gasped and looked up, seeing the hologram of Prime standing tall before her. B-127, I pray this message F finds you. This is Op. ZZZZZKRT, Ime. Ha, oh my goodness. Windblade smiled brightly, ecstatic at the sight of her leader. Yes, this is him. It's Optimus Prime. At the sound of the bot's name, however, Bumblebee's optics shot open and his head began to hurt, causing him to put a hand to his helm again. The moment he had to kneel on the ground again, he knew that this had to be another memory resurfacing. The Ark is out there somewhere in the galaxy. We must reach it and its crew if we hope to survive. Optimus, this is our home. We have to fight for it. We will fight on, but we must find our comrades, and refuge, first. B-127. Bumblebee's optics refocused and his head snapped up, seeing Windblade with a concerned expression. Are you okay? B nodded and shook his head, tapping his helm all the while. You're getting your memories back, slowly but surely, aren't you? Once again, she received a nod, making her smile again as she placed her hand on his shoulder again. Good, glad to hear it. And don't worry, I'm going to help you through this. I promise. Beneath his mouth guard, Bumblebee smiled at Windblade, raising a fist up to her. The taller bot blinked a bit before understanding what he was trying to do, giving him a fist bump back. Hee, okay, we're a team on this one. By the way, do you remember how to use your stingers? She received a head tilt from the yellow mech, causing her to laugh a little. Hee, I thought not. Here, let me help with that one. Windblade extended a finger and a small tool retracted from it, one which she inserted into Bumblebee's forearm. The smaller bot let out a surprised buzz as his hand suddenly began to flip inside of his wrist, which was then substituted for a metallic spike-shaped weapon with jagged blue lines engraved in it, as well as a blue tip. The blue parts glowed brightly as bright yellow sparks began to jolt out from it, making B stumble back a bit. Whoa, it's okay, B. Windblade assured. These are just your weapons. I figured it'd be best for you to be able to use them, just in case. Oh, and you have one in each arm, by the way. Weapons. Bumblebee gazed at the stingers in surprise. He didn't even know he had built-in weapons. Did that faceplate he had also count as a weapon? He activated his faceplate and continued to stare at his stinger, bringing out the other one for good measure while taking Windblade by surprise. Whoa, guess you remember how to do more than even you thought. B was about to respond, but then he heard a small beeping noise, making him pull back his faceplate and shift his arms back to normal before transforming altogether. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Back in his Volkswagen Beetle mode, Bumblebee opened up his glove compartment and activated his holoform, making a desperate grab for the tracer that May made for him. Whoa, and you know how to bring up your holoform. Windblade said with a smile. You real know more than I, huh? Bumblebee's holoform stepped out of his vehicle mode with the tracer in hand, with the holographic radar popping up from it soon after. Wait, what is this? On the radar, 2 lights were blinking red not too far away from their current location, indicating that a signal was being sent to them. Bumblebee turned on his radio and explained, ZRKT, my friends. ZRKT, they're in trouble. Your friends, the ones who've been helping you? Windblade asked. ZRKT, yes. ZRKT, we need to help them. This was admittedly a little conflicting for Windblade. On the one hand, she didn't want their secret to potentially get out to the populace of this planet. Optimus had always told her that he didn't want other races to get caught up in the Autobot-Decepticon war. But on the other, every Autobot instinct in her was screaming to help, and that proved to be the one that won out. She gave Bumblebee a grin and let out a soft sigh. Well, if they've been a big help to you so far, the least I can do is help you return the favor. Let's do it, B-127. ZRKT, great. Bumblebee pumped a fist into the air before stepping back into his vehicle mode, only to pause before he drove off. ZRKT, by the way, he gave a smile of his own up to Windblade and said through his radio, ZRKT, my name, ZRKT, as ZRKT, Bumblebee. This statement made Windblade raise an eyebrow. Bumblebee. ZRKT, that's what my friends call me. Windblade was silent for a few moments before shrugging it off, deciding to go with it. Well, I admit, it's a bit of an odd designation, but alright, Bumblebee it is. Now let's go save your friends. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Windblade transformed back into her jet mode and the duo zoomed off, heading for the source of the signal as fast as they could. A few minutes, the duo arrived at what appeared to be a large, domed structure all the way on the other side of the massive campus, the duo moving around the side of the building until they were pretty much directly next to where the signal was coming from. Wow, whatever this place is, it's pretty big. Windblade commented as she landed next to Bumblebee, only for the sound of alarms to start going off. Oh geez, did we set those off? Shoom. Bumblebee and Windblade's heads snapped around to see a certain blue-haired boy rushing away from them, the engines in his legs moving him at top speed. Thankfully, he hadn't noticed them. Oh, it must have been him. ZRKT, Tenya. Bumblebee exclaimed, craning his head up to Windblade. ZRKT, he must be, ZRKT, off to get help. The fembot gave a nod as she pulled something off of her waist, a black handle that appeared to have a fan-shaped handguard. That's good, it means that backup is on the way. She pressed her thumb to the handle and all at once, a bright purple energy blade suddenly activated from it, revealing the weapon as a full-fledged sword. Bumblebee's optics widened as he watched Windblade point the tip of the sword at the wall. Now be ready, we're going in. Kyoka couldn't help but grit her teeth as the bad guys continued to close in on her, Izuku and Momo, forcing all three of the students to press their backs up against the wall. They tried to fend them off for as long as they could with their own weapons, with Momo even making a pair of nightsticks for Izuku to wield in the meantime. However, the bad guys just continued to keep coming, and there was still no sign of Bumblebee. Then again, maybe I expected too much. Kyoka thought to herself in frustration. Damn it Kyoka, Bumblebee wouldn't even be able to get in here. You're such a... Whoa, what the hell is that? One of the thugs pointed upward, causing the three students to follow his light of sight. The trio let out a gasp as they suddenly saw a purple energy blade suddenly come jutting out of the concrete wall, slicing into it in a circular motion like it was a hot knife through butter. What? Izuku muttered to himself. I don't know. Kyoka admitted. That can't be him, can it? Momo rounded to the both of them and asked, what are you two talking about? What's going on? At that moment, the blade finished cutting through the wall, completing the circle before being pulled out. On the other side, Kyoka picked up a familiar sound through her jacks, making her smile. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. I think you're about to find out. With the sound of revving engines reaching her ears, Kyoka pulled both of her friends away from the wall and shouted, hit the dirt. Before something came crashing through, sending up dust and dirt everywhere as the cut part of the wall collapsed. The villains all shouted in confusion as, from out of the dust, a certain yellow Volkswagen Beetle came rolling out, its driver glaring daggers at the bad guys from behind the wheel. From the radio, everyone could hear heavy metal music slowly beginning to play, much to their bewilderment. Momo's jaw dropped at the sight. Wait, isn't that All Might's intern? Wait, did that chick just say he's All Might's intern? One of the villains called out. That's great, we can force him to tell us where he is. Not good, Izuku said before shifting his eyes back over to Momo. Why Yaoyorozu, why you said that you can keep a secret? He furrowed his brows, a serious expression on his face. See, can we count on you to keep that promise? Momo shifted her eyes between Izuku, Kyoka, the villains and All Might's intern in the Yellow Beetle. As confused as she was, she had a feeling that all of this had to do with him. And right now, in this situation, it was probably best to agree. She returned Izuku's expression in kinda and nodded. Why yes, I can. Good. Izuku whipped around and extended a hand to the beetle-bound blonde. Bumblebee, do it. He saw the blonde holoform gave him a nod before turning his attention back to the villains, his icy blue eyes continuing to bore holes in them as the heavy metal played. Drowning deep in my sea of loathing. Broken your servant I kneel. Will you give in to me? It seems what's left of my human side is slowly changing in me. Will you give in to me? At that moment, Bumblebee's holoform disappeared, causing everyone aside from Izuku and Kyoka to gasp in shock. And then, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. Looking at my own reflection. When suddenly it changes. Violently it changes. Oh no. In place of the Volkswagen, Bumblebee stood tall in his robot form, his hands clenching into powerful metal fists as he continued to glare down at the smaller villains. At this point, pretty much every single bad guy was starting to freak out, yelling things like, "Ah! What the hell is that? It's a killer car. And no, it's a killer robot. Who cared what it is? We need to kill it before it can kill us." Izuku and Kyoka were wearing similar smiles as Momo's eyes were the size of saucers, her voice caught in her throat as she watched the robot activate some sort of battle mask over its face. What's going on? Her voice trembled. You're about to find out. Kyoka smirked, though that disappeared when she noticed that B's hands were suddenly converted into small, spike-shaped, things that were crackling with electricity. What? There is no turning back now. You've woken up the demon in me. Without wasting time, Bumblebee charged directly into the crowd of bad guys, engaging them in combat while using his newly acquired stingers. Somehow, upon bringing them out, Bumblebee's mind was beginning to remember how to properly use them, kind of like how he knew on instinct how to activate his holoform. He kept the wattage of his bolts down as he continued to attack, making sure that it was not enough to actually kill the bad guys. Still, he didn't let up for a second as the villains engaged him, the music still playing as he fought. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Open up your hate, and let it flow into me. Get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You mother, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. You fucker, get up, come on, get down with the sickness. Madness is the gift that has been given to me. By the end of the first verse, Bumblebee had pretty much taken down all of the villains that he could see, and he did so very effectively. He managed to knock all of them out cold, using either his stingers to do so or just using bluntness of his metal body. In the end, though, the result was the same, him standing victorious over the many knocked out villains. Bumblebee cut the music and pulled his battle mask back into his help, shifting his stingers back into his arms as he raised his fists in victory. ZRKT, woohoo! And the crowd goes wild. Izuku and Kyoka cheered as well, the duo running up to meet Bumblebee as Momo continued to stare dumbfoundedly. Bumblebee knelt down and pulled Izuku and Kyoka into a hug, the two humans laughing in relief. Haha. Bumblebee, that was great. Kyoka beamed. You totally kicked their asses. Why yeah, great job, B. Izuku agreed. B but, how did you even do that? What were those weapons? B rubbed the back of his head before his optics caught sight of the third member of their group, causing Izuku and Kyoka to set their sights back over to the still stunned Momo. Oh, why Yaoyorozu, it's okay. He's our friend. Your friend. Momo uttered as Bumblebee set both Kyoka and Izuku down, making his way over to Momo and crouching down in front of her, making her give out a small eep. Kyoka rushed over and raised a hand to Momo in reassurance. Hey, it's okay. Everything's good, she set a hand on Bumblebee, keeping her eyes on Momo. Yaoyorozu, this is Bumblebee. As you can see, he's a giant transforming robot. She craned her head up to B next. And B, this is Momo Yaoyorozu. You may remember her from our combat training. Momo blinked and her eyes went up to Bumblebee. Wait, All Might's intern, Brian, she pointed up to him. That's you. B nodded and gave a thumbs up, causing Momo to run a hand through her hair. Oh my, this is a lot to take in, All of a sudden, the sound of a scream along with crackling electricity caused the two girls in yellow mech to spin around, only to come face to face with a terrifying sight, another villain. This one was a tall man wearing a skull-shaped helmet, and he was holding Izuku hostage. It was evident that he had electrical powers, as his hand was crackling with lightning which he had already zapped Izuku with once. That was your only warning zap. The villain belted out, holding his hand up to Izuku's head. Make one false move, and his brain is scrambled. Kyoka gasped and Bumblebee's optics widened in shock. Izuku. No. Momo took a step back in shock. What? How? I thought all of the villains were. I hid underground, girly. The villain explained, keeping his eyes concentrated on the trio as Izuku weakly struggled in his grasp. I just had to wait until one of you was by themselves so I could get the jump on you. And now that I have my bargaining chip, he pointed to Bumblebee. Call off your attack robot. His electric zappers can't affect me since I'm an electric-type quirk user, so if you know what's good for ya, you'll all follow me to my boss. Bumblebee furrowed his irises and made to step forward, only for the villain to put his hand nearer to Izuku's face. Weren't you paying attention, you bucket of bolts? One false move and your friend gets killed. Damn it, Kyoka murmured. He caught us with our pants down. And Izuku can't get out of there without breaking his bones or getting his brain fried. Momo grit her teeth together. He must have been the one jamming our communications. How do we? Whoosh. Ah. All of a sudden, a huge gust of wind suddenly blew through the entire mountain zone, taking everyone off guard. Bumblebee lowered himself down over the girls to make sure they didn't get blown away, and then a blur of red and black suddenly rushed past them, causing everyone to go slack-jawed at what they saw. What? Kyoka continued to stare upward as she got a clear view of what had flown into the USJ, a red and black VTOL jet, and what came next shocked everyone even more. WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. The jet transformed into a very tall, slender robot, one that appeared quite feminine, in fact. And the face that her head resembled a kabuki mask made things all the more strange. Again, what? Is that, a geisha robot? Momo shouted. The winged fembot glowered down to the electric villain and took a combat stance, bringing out the glowing violet energy blade that they group had seen earlier. Step away from the young organic. She said firmly. Stay back. The bad guy threatened. I can, FWOOSH. Yeah. All of a sudden, the turbines on the fembot's wings kicked into high gear, rotating at such speeds that they blew the bad guy away. The fem reached out and scooped Izuku out of the air just as the villain was sent careening into a nearby rock outcropping, knocking him out cold. The female robot retracted her wings into her back and scoffed, HMPH, good riddance. She brought up the rattled, but still very much aware Izuku in her hand, giving him a kind smile as he trembled in shock. Are you alright, young organic? I. Izuku stuttered, his brain unable to process what he was seeing. The fem raised an irage before turning back to B. Bumblebee, is he short-circuiting or something? Bumblebee stood up and made a so-so motion with his hand, taking Kyoka by surprise. B. You know this bot. The punk rocker then waved her arms around. Wait, never mind that, you found another one of your kind. Indeed, he did. The red and black femme said as she came over and set Izuku onto the ground, managing to snap the quirk inheritor out of his stupor in the process. Or rather, I found him. And I suppose that you all are the ones who have been keeping my friend here a secret on this planet. She bowed her head in gratitude. Thank you very much for helping him out. My name is Windblade, by the way. Nice to meet you. Izuku muttered. I'm Izuku M. Midoriya. Kyoka introduced herself next. I'm Kyoka Jiro. Gotta say, we were not expecting to see you today. The perplexed saw that Momo was still pretty stunned by what she was seeing, so she elbowed the girl in her side to bring her back to reality. Oh. And my name is Momo Yaoyorozu. She bowed her head back to Windblade respectfully. Windblade smiled back at the three. Nice to meet you Izuku, Kyoka, Momo. She then took note that the latter girl still seemed to be somewhat uneasy, her face completely unsure of what to make of all this. Momo, are you alright? You look a bit shaken. I'm sorry, all of this is just getting dumped onto me right now all at once. Momo explained before spinning around to Izuku and Kyoka. Just how long have you known about these robots existing? Also, should we be worried about these villains having seen them? Kyoka shook her head. Nah, by the time they wake up, they'll all have thought it was just a bad dream. She then jabbed a thumb to herself. As for how long we've known, I've only known about B for a month. Then she nudged her head to Izuku. But Green Bean here has known him for about 5. Why yeah, Izuku affirmed. I found him rusting away under a pile of trash on Dagoba Beach, and once he was restored, well, he came back online. Momo shifted her gaze up to Bumblebee, who gave a nod to confirm Izuku's story. I see, so does that mean that there are others who know about Bumblebee's existence? Yes, B, but I think we'll have to give you the full details later, Yaoyorozu. Izuku pressed with a serious expression coming to his face. Right now, we have a lot of more important things to deal with. These villains are all here so that they can try to kill All Might, and I'm afraid with a boast like that, they might have something that can actually do that. I guess it's a good thing that All Might's not here, then. Kyoka commented. But, then again, you could argue that we could use him here right now, too. Bumblebee piped up once more. ZRKT, maybe he'll, ZRKT, be here soon. He received a slew of confused faces at this before elaborating, ZRKT, help is on the way. He's right, Windblade interjected. We saw one of your friends escape from this facility and start running as fast as he could. And I must say, he was moving much faster than I imagined and Organic ever could. The faces of the 3 humans brightened up instantly. Haha, Iida managed to get out. Kyoka pumped a fist. We might just be getting some backup after all. Windblade placed her hands on her hips. Yeah, but there's still a lot that I'm not fully understanding. Who exactly is this, All Might, person? And you said that you were being attacked by villains. As in, bad guys. Izuku directed his attention back to the femme and explained. Why yes, villains. And as for who All Might is, he's the world's #1 hero. Kyoka extended a hand up to the red and black bot. Windblade, I know that this is all a bit much to take in at once, but long story short is that you and B are on a world filled with heroes and villains. I promise we'll explain everything soon, but for right now, we need to regroup with the rest of our class. Windblade blinked her optics a couple times before letting out a sigh. Well, I gotta say, I was definitely not expecting all of this to happen when I made Planet Fall a few hours ago. ZRKT, welcome to Earth. Bumblebee piped up, giving a small shrug. ZRKT, it's all kinda strange. Indeed. Windblade grinned down to the 3 humans and gave them a thumbs up. Alright, Earthlings, let's get you all out of here, okay. She waved her hand to the large hole in the wall. And fortunately, we have an exit right here. Wait. Izuku raised a hand in protest. We can't leave yet. And not with our classmates all still in danger. We have to regroup with them before we can leave. Kyoka pursed her lips and folded her arms. Izuku's right. We can't just leave our class high and dry like that. Plus, it'll look super suspicious if they find us outside once help arrives. The city speaker put a hand to her chin, contemplating the information she was presented with. You both make a good point. Bumblebee, what do you think? ZRKT, we stick together and we'll see it through. Bumblebee answered through his radio, pumping a fist. Hey, well, if you say so. Windblade said with a nod. Do it, B. At her word, Bumblebee transformed into his vehicle mode, his doors opening while his blonde holoform reappeared in his driver's seat. Okay, kids, here's what's gonna go down. Bumblebee is going to safely escort you back to your class. She sent them an apologetic smile. Unfortunately, my alt mode is much more conspicuous compared to B's, so I don't think I can follow you without getting noticed. Kyoka gave Windblade a smirk. Yeah, probably best if you head back outside for now. We'll meet back up with you once we all get out of here. Sounds like a plan, Windblade said with a wink. Now go with Bumblebee and remember, stay safe. Alright. Izuku nodded as he and Kyoka gladly climbed into the back seat of the Beetle, making sure to take the weapons that Momo made for them, just in case. That left only Momo herself standing outside. Why Yaoyorozu, aren't you coming? Oh, why yeah, Momo approached the passenger side door and got in, letting out an apprehensive breath all the while. It's just, I'm still kind of processing all of this. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about being driven around in a robot wearing a car as a disguise. She eyed B's holoform, the blonde giving her a cheery smile. And oddly enough, the human illusion doesn't exactly help. Ah, you'll get used to it, Kyoka assured before pointing forward. Now come on, we've gotta regroup with our class. Let's roll. And with that, Bumblebee started his engine and rolled out of the mountain zone, with Windblade staring after them as they drove off. It was times like these where Windblade wished that she could help without having to compromise her cover. But as much as she wanted to assist her new allies, she knew that she couldn't head out there in plain sight for everyone to see. The thugs laying on the ground near her feet probably wouldn't remember them after the smackdown that B had laid on them, but a bunch of other villains and students all in one collective place. Yeah, that would definitely count as revealing herself. If these villains really are as dangerous as Izuku thinks they are, then whoever this All Might person is, I hope he gets here soon. Windblade thought to herself as she stepped through the hole she had made, going to hide herself as quickly as she could before backup arrived. Chapter 12, The USJ, Part 2. Jacob Burns had to admit, the last thing he expected to happen to him today was waiting on a desolate road in the middle of Tochigi, Japan, waiting for a couple of alien robots. But indeed, that was the case, and at the moment, he wore a serious expression as he and his combat team, Unit E, all stood by with their weapons drawn, creating a large barricade in the middle of the intersection. Thankfully, the road wasn't one that saw a lot of traffic, so they didn't have any witnesses as they waited for the NDEs to make their appearance. Next to him, Agent Fowler strolled up and placed his hands behind his back, taking a deep breath as he steadied himself. So, first contact. First real contact. Yeah, I hear ya. Jacob nodded affirmingly. You nervous? Did George Washington cut down a cherry tree when he was 6? Pretty sure that myth was disproven. Jacob replied, as was the one about his wooden teeth. Fowler sighed and rolled his eyes. Yes, I'm nervous. I think that's safe to say for all of us. Speak for yourself, Special Agent Fowler. Both Fowler and Burns internally groaned at the voice that was approaching from behind them, turning their heads to see a bespectacled man with deep olive skin and thinning gray hair approach them. He had what could only be described as one of the most euphoric smiles on his faces as he strolled up to them, barely able to contain his excitement. After 300 years, we're finally getting a chance to talk to these creatures face to face, and it has been a long time coming. I've spent my whole life waiting for this moment, you know. Jacob rolled his eyes. Well, Powell, I'm glad that you're happy. But remember, if these things so much as threaten us even a little, we've been given the okay to use lethal force if necessary. Well, hopefully it won't come to that, Agent Burns. Dr. Powell said with a wave of his hand. After all, we will want to at least try and study them, or perhaps even bargain with them to see how their technology truly works. While I can see your point, Doctor, I can also assure you that the safety of our men is my #1 concern here. Fowler asserted. Meeting aliens is one thing, but I'm not about to lose a life here today, not on my watch. Just then, a voice suddenly piped up on Fowler's radio, FOX2 on approach. Non-biologicals are inbound. The 3 members of Sector 7 all turned their heads down the road, seeing not only their aircraft returning, but a certain pair of red and blue armored vehicles heading toward them as well. Powell's smile widened as he clapped his hands together. Oh, here we go, the moment of truth. Remember, the goal should be to peacefully communicate with them. I'm well aware of the goal, Dr. Powell. Jacob assured as he felt his hands began to get hotter and hotter by the second, ready to use his quirk if necessary. In fact, many of the men and women under his command also had combat-ready quirks, the battalion all preparing themselves to use them as well. But if they make one wrong move, we'll need to put them down. He gave a nod over to Fowler. Bill, you're up. Right. Fowler took a deep breath before striding forward, making sure to straighten out his suit and tie as he did. Burns and Powell followed closely behind him as the 2 armored vehicles began to close in, and then WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZTSCHZZCHK. All at once, the 2 vehicles converted into a pair of large robots, the duo standing tall as they gazed down at the humans with their red eyes. Somehow, though, they appeared slightly different than how Jacob had seen them in the pictures. Now, there was a large tail fin that was sticking up out of the red one's back, while the blue one now had a propeller that was folded down on his own back. Did they adopt the forms of our aircraft, too? Burns wondered to himself. Meanwhile, Dropkick was utterly disgusted by what he was seeing, leaning over to Shatter to whisper in Cybertronian, "The humans are multiplying. Please, let me kill them." "Not yet," Shatter whispered back. "Remember, B-127's signal has gone silent. Allow me to let my idea play out, and then we'll see where we go from there." Shatter turned back to the large group of soldiers as the rather portly man directly in front spoke up, "Non-biological lifeforms. I am Special Agent William Fowler. I'm with the Japanese branch of Sector 7, as well as a representative of the United States government." He jerked a thumb to Burns and then to Powell. "These two are Agent Jacob Burns and Dr. Powell. We currently have 100 powerful quirk users on standby. So state your business on our planet, if you'd please." "People of Earth," Shatter spoke in her best, kind voice, kneeling down while extending her hands toward the humans. "My name is Shatter, and this is my companion, Dropkick. We are Decepticon peacekeepers, patrolling the galaxy." Dropkick was instantly baffled. Wait, what are you?" But then, he saw Shatter giving him an expectant face, causing him to sigh and roll his optics as he knelt down as well. This is humiliating," he mumbled to himself. Shatter went back to the humans and extended her arm, activating a holographic image of a certain yellow bot. "We believe that a dangerous criminal from our world is hiding somewhere on yours." Jacob's eyes widened immediately. "Wait, NBE-1. You seem to recognize him, Agent Burns," Shatter commented, taking Jacob by surprise. "Have you perhaps seen him before?" Both Fowler and Powell glanced over to Burns, the former cursing to himself at how quick Shatter was at reading expressions. Well, not me personally," Jacob answered, knowing that he would need to give a straight answer if he wanted things to go well. "But my great-grandfather had an encounter with this bot over 300 years back." Around the time when he went AWOL," Dropkick commented. Shatter smiled and nodded. "Indeed, how very convenient." Powell then spoke up next. "How is it that you think we can help you locate this fugitive?" "We need your eyes," Shatter said, raising her hands up above her head as she and Dropkick stood up. The moment she said that, both Burns and Fowler knew that something seemed off. Wait, you want access to our satellites?" Burns exclaimed. "Indeed. The range of our scanners has recently become limited," Shatter explained. "And while your infrastructure is quite primitive, if we combine our abilities, we could create something quite powerful." "No way," Fowler asserted with a swipe of his arm. "Out of the question. We have a common enemy, Special Agent Fowler," Shatter said with a foreboding tone to her voice. "There is a war raging on our planet. And if B-127 isn't found, that war may very well find its way here. The last thing we want is to have your race caught up in our conflict." Fowler pursed his lips in frustration. The last thing he wanted to do was be responsible for getting his planet caught up in an intergalactic war. He was about to respond, when Powell did it for him. "Perhaps, we could find a way help each other," the scientist said. "We'll talk it over with our superiors, and in the meantime, if you could follow us." He gave a nod over to Bill. "What do you say, Special Agent Fowler?" For a few seconds more, Fowler stayed silent before letting out a sigh, giving a slow nod of his head. "Well, it's probably the best option we have at the moment, so, very well. They may accompany us back to base." He got up close and personal to Powell while pointing a finger right in his face. "But keep in mind, if anything happens, it's on your ass, Powell." Powell took a deep breath and nodded back. "Understood, Agent Fowler. But trust me, I have a feeling we won't regret this." He then smiled and turned back to the two Decepticons. "All right, you two have been given the clear. Now, all you have to do is follow us." Behind the scientist, however, Burns and Fowler eyed each other nervously as Shatter smiled down to the man. "Very well, friend Powell. Take us to your leader." Back at the USJ, Denki Kaminari was freaking the hell out. Not only had a huge group of villains suddenly come out of freaking nowhere to try and kill All Might, but the dark cloud-like villain had somehow managed to transport a whole bunch of them all across the facility. And the fact that Aizawa was taking them all on pretty much by himself didn't help matters much. One hero against over 50 bad guys or more, it didn't sound like a winning matchup, even with Aizawa's erasure quirk. And to top it all off, Sue and Keita had all been transported to the shipwreck zone, where they were stranded in the middle of a massive lake on a boat, and there were a bunch of water-based villains closing in on them with every passing second. So, Denki immediately did the most natural thing that came to him: panic. "We're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die," he kept repeating to himself as he rocked back and forth in the fetal position on the deck. "Kaminari," Keita piped up. There's so many villains." Denki's hands went to his head as he put it between his knees. And we're just sitting ducks out here in the water." "Kaminari, ribbit," Sue said as well. But Denki wasn't listening. "This isn't how I pictured dying, guys. I didn't think that this'd happen on our first week in UA. How are we supposed to get out of this freaking Kaminari?" Both girls shouted, breaking the electric blonde out of his stupor. Keita reached out and grabbed a hold of his collar. "Pull yourself together, man. There's an entirely obvious way that we can get out of this, and the answer lies with you." Denki blinked in surprise. Really?" Keita prodded a finger to his chest. Yeah. Do you not remember what your powers are?" She then waved her hand all around her, indicating the water that surrounded them. "And just what we're in the middle of." Denki continued to stare at the Soro parts user in befuddlement before she let out a groan, directing his head down toward the water. Pikachu, use Thunderbolt on the water." Finally, a look of realization came to Kaminari's face as he smacked his forehead. "Oh, right. How the hell did I not think of that?" Keita gave him a deadpan expression as he gave her and Sue a thumbs up. "Don't worry, ladies, your savior is on the job." "Oh, I feel so safe now," Keita said sarcastically. Denki began charging up his entire body and backed up a bit, intending to get a running start. "Hey, water-based bad guys. You're all fried." With that, Denki leapt up and over the edge, leaving Keita and Sue to watch as the entire lake below them lit up in a bright light, followed by the pain-filled yells and screams of the shocked bad guys below. "Well, that was easy, ribbit." Sue put a finger to her chin in thought. "I wonder if that portal villain took our quirks into account when he transported us. Even if Kaminari wasn't here, I'd still be able to swim around these guys easily." "Yeah, and I could fly us out of here no prob." Keita nodded. "You could. Then why did I convince Kaminari to jump in?" Keita finished before jutting a thumb down to the lake below, with all of the bad guys now floating unconsciously in the drink. "2 reasons, one was so we could take out all of those bad guys. The less of them going around, the better. And 2, Kaminari needed a confidence boost. Now that that's done, we can get out of here." Keita spread her arms out and shouted, "Pterodactyl wings." All at once, her arms converted into a pair of large wings, made of a muscly membrane that spanned about twice the length of her own body. "All right, Sue, climb on and be ready to grab Kaminari." Sue gave a small ribbit, while nodding before getting on Keita's back, the girl getting a running start before flapping her wings to take flight. Then, using her long, frog-like tongue, Sue grabbed Kaminari from out of the water, and the blonde was clearly quite out of it. He was making a very dumb face while giving 2 thumbs up, his nose bleeding as he babbled about random things. "I guess we passed the shipwreck zone." Keita smirked at that. "You can say that again. Now let's get back to the others." Flying high overhead, Keita was getting a good view of the action, and it was evident that things weren't going so well for Mr. Aizawa. He had been touched on the elbow by one of the leaders of the League of Villains, a creepy, blue-haired man with severed hands decorating his body, and as a result, his elbow had been disintegrated to the point where his muscles could be clearly seen. And yet, he was still fighting. Oh God. This isn't good," Sue said, her tongue still all the way out. "Mr. Aizawa can't take all of them by himself with an injury that bad." "I know, but if we get involved in that scrap, who knows how long we'll last." Keita retorted, her eyes moving down to the still incapacitated Denki. "And we're already carrying around a down teammate. We need to regroup with the others for now and hope that backup can." Keita let out a gasp as she approached the entrance of the USJ, and was met with a rather disheartening sight. There, Rikido, Hanta, and Mezzo were all standing guard as Ochako and Mina were crouched down, right next to an injured Thrytine. The space hero's back was almost completely blown to bits, exposing what seemed to be an empty husk of a costume. However, 13 still appeared to be moving, so they must have been alive. Chaco. Keita cried out as she landed on the entryway, with Sue gently setting down Kaminari in the process. Ochako gasped as she and the others saw the three run up to them, replying back, Keita. And Sue, and Kaminari. Oh, I'm so glad is he okay? Kaminari uttered dumbly as he continued to give thumbs up. He'll be fine, Keita assured before moving over to 13 in concern. But what about 13? What happened here? Mina was the one to answer that, the pink girl's eyes brimming with tears. That portal villain, he did this. 13 tried using Black Hole to subdue him, but he used his quirk to use it against 13. Keita grit her teeth and punched the palm of her hand. Damn it. 13's down, Aizawa's in trouble, how are we gonna? Don't worry, Ochako said before pointing to the door. We managed to get Tenya out of here, and after that, the portal guy disappeared. With any luck, he'll be back with the teachers, hopefully. The Soro Parts user let out a frustrated sigh. I really hope you're right, Chaco, because with the kind of day we've had, we need a little hope. Of all the places Izuku had wanted to end up, this was probably the last on his list. Bumblebee, Kyoka, Momo and himself were all hiding behind a rather large bush just outside of the ruins zone, hiding themselves as they watched what was happening in the center of the USJ. They were far enough away that the villains hadn't noticed them, at least they were mostly sure of that. But that was just the problem, the villains were in their way. They had made good progress in getting to the exit, but going forward, there was no good way to actually get there without the bright yellow Volkswagen Beetle that was Bumblebee being noticed, and once they would most certainly be pursued. So much for being able to sneak all the way to the exit. Izuku thought to himself. The only thing they could really do at the moment was hide and watch as the villains continued to fight against Mr. Aizawa, his elbow having been disintegrated by the one Kyoka had affectionately called, Hand Guy. As it happened, Kyoka was also using her quirk to listen in on the villains, the bad guys just barely in her hearing radius. Oh okay, Hand Guy is taunting Aizawa now, trying to get in his head. Momo felt her gut flip when she saw Aizawa's hair go down briefly, indicating that he wasn't using his quirk. The bad guys then took the opportunity to try and pummel him, but the black-haired teacher quickly countered using his scarf before activating his quirk again. He can't keep this up forever. His quirk relies in him keeping his eyes open all the time and he can't keep it up. I know, it's hard to watch. Izuku agreed before letting out a gasp, seeing the gigantic beast that the villains had brought with them suddenly come up behind Aizawa. The monster was just over 6 feet tall and had jet black skin, its face having a massive beak with jagged, yellow lips and sharp teeth. Its muscles were so huge that there were tears in its flesh, exposing its muscles underneath. And what's more, its brain was exposed, its large, round eyes having sunken into the gray matter as well. Oh god, what is that? Kyoka's eyes widened as she watched the beast raise its hand. Hand Guy says that, it's the anti-symbol of peace, crack. The trio of humans let out horrified gasps and Bumblebee's eyes widened in horror as the creature batted Aizawa across the face, removing his goggles while creating a massive gash in the teacher's forehead. The creature then proceeded to mercilessly beat Aizawa into submission, going right for his destroyed elbow. Kyoka felt a chill go through her as she swallowed fearfully, continuing what she was saying. He calls it, Nomu. The quartet could only watch as Nomu squeezed on Aizawa's elbow, breaking it fully and rendering the limb lip. The monster then stomped down on Aizawa's other arm, breaking it as well. Momo's hand covered her mouth as she squeezed her eyes shut, unable to watch as Nomu smashed Aizawa's head into the ground. It's going to kill him. That's probably what they planned on using to kill All Might. Izuku muttered, unable to take his eyes away. In the driver's seat, Bumblebee's holoform was gripping the wheel as hard as he could, his teeth clenched as he watched the beast break the Erasure Hero. Such destructive power, it made him uncomfortable. It made him angry at the villains for doing such things. And most of all, it made him frustrated that he wasn't doing anything about it. It just felt wrong not to do something. Kyoka's voice trembled as she continued to relay what Hand Guy was saying. The guy says that Nomu is pure destructive power, and that Mr. Aizawa's quirk is useless against it. Then, she and everyone else let out a small gasp as they saw the dark portal villain from before enter the scene from literally out of thin air. It's the villain who warped us all over the USJ. Momo whispered. What's he? Shish, I'm getting names. Kyoka shushed, keeping her ears keen on the scene before them. Hang guy's name is Tamura Shigaraki, and the portal guy is called Kurogiri. Kyoka's face then paled at what she heard next. Oh god, Kurogiri said that he managed to take 13 out. What? Izuku exclaimed. Momo placed a hand to her forehead in panic. This is bad, very bad. But then, Kyoka raised her hand. Wait, he just told Shigaraki about Iida escaping, and I think Shigaraki's freaking out about it. True to form, they could see the blue-haired man begin to scratch himself uncontrollably for a few seconds before suddenly stopping, and what he said next gave Kyoka hope. Wait. He said there's no point in continuing if the heroes are coming, he says they're leaving. Momo immediately brightened up at the news. Really? Oh, thank goodness, wait. At that moment, the rational part of Momo's mind kicked into high gear, the creation quirk user putting a hand to her chin. That doesn't make any sense. Why would they retreat now, even if backup is coming? Especially when they have something that could possibly kill All Might. ZRKT, right, ZRKT, it seems too easy. Bumblebee said through his radio. They're both right. Izuku nodded. And if backup is coming, then All Might probably is, too. They must know that UA will beef up their security after this, so now's their best chance to kill him. Why is this where they end things? Hold on, I'm getting more, Kyoka said before concentrating once again. He says that he wants to make sure All Might is broken, and hurt his pride. All of a sudden, a dark portal emerged in front of Kyoka's window, and a certain hand began to reach through to her face. Izuku could feel his gut sink down hard and fast. He had seen what Shigaraki did to Aizawa's elbow, and if he could do the same thing someone's face, no, the image of Kyoka disintegrating entered his mind, and it was then that he quickly leapt into action. No. Izuku quickly pulled Kyoka down, laying her flat on the back seat and out of reach from Shigaraki's hand. Drive. Not needing to be told twice, B stepped on the gas and rolled out of their hiding spot, speeding out into the clearing to get away from Shigaraki's hand. Once they were out in the open, they pulled to a screeching halt, allowing everyone a moment to breathe a sigh of relief. Are you two okay back there? Momo called over her shoulder. Kyoka's hands went to her face, making sure that it was still all there. Why yeah, I think so. She glanced up to Izuku and gave him a thankful smile. Thanks for the save, celery stick. I owe you one big time. I'm just glad that you're alright. Izuku grinned back. Thanks, now, could you let me up? Kyoka asked. As comfy as your lap is, we need to focus up right now. It was at that moment that Izuku finally noticed. He had pulled Kyoka down so that her head was resting on his lap, and his arm was draped securely over her midsection. A wild blush came to his face and his arms immediately snapped up, waving them frantically as he apologized. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Kyoka, I didn't mean to. Izuku, relax. Kyoka pressed, her smile still present. After all, you saved my freaking life. She wore a blush of her own as she began twirling one of her jacks around her finger. And I honestly can't thank you enough for that. Izuku tapped his fingers together, laughing nervously. Beep. The duo were pulled out of their conversation as Bumblebee honked his horn, the blonde holoform focused directly on what was in front of him. Izuku, Kyoka and Momo all moved their eyes up to see Shigaraki, Kurogiri and Nomu all facing them, the beast holding Aizawa's broken form by his head. Oh, right. Shigaraki began clapping his hands together, his raspy voice sending chills through the teens. Oh, how magnificent. You guys really got out of there fast. He extended both hands toward them. And in such a retro ride, too. You guys really are pretty cool, but unfortunately, we don't exactly have time to be playing games here, kiddies. Tamura Shigaraki, should I transport them away again? Kurogiri asked. I've had enough of your failure for one day, Kurogiri. Shigaraki snapped back. Wherever you transport them, they'll just keep coming back. I have a more permanent solution in mind. Nomu. Next to him, the beast roared and dropped Aizawa on the ground, preparing to do something. Oh god, he's gonna sick that thing on us. Kyoka exclaimed. Izuku's hand went to his head. Crap, Crap. What do we do? Bumblebee began glancing around, hoping to think of a solution in time. He was pretty sure that Thing could chase them down effectively if they drove away, so he needed some way to subdue it. At that moment, Bumblebee's eyes had landed on the katana that Momo had made for Kyoka, the blade lying down in the back seat. His sights then went back to Nomu, and he immediately took note of the exposed brain. The blonde holoform smiled and he reached behind him, picking up the blade in his hands. Wait, B, what are you? Ah. Without warning, Bumblebee opened his doors and began shaking, sending Izuku, Kyoka and Momo all spilling out. ZRKT, run away. B shouted through his radio as he gave them a thumbs up. ZRKT, I got this. All at once, Bumblebee's tires started spinning, screeching as he began to drive straight at the three villains. The trio of teens couldn't believe what he was doing. No, B, that thing will kill you. Izuku cried out. Come back here, you bolt brain. Kyoka screamed desperately. Shigaraki gave a scoff. Hey, a foolish move. Nomu, stop that car and kill the idiot behind the wheel. He raised a finger. But make sure not to damage that ride. Something retro like that will fetch a pretty price on the black market. Nomu roared in response and charged at Bumblebee, throwing its arms forward before catching the Volkswagen Beetle by his bumper. Nomu then hoisted Bumblebee up into the air, with the blonde holoform wearing a slightly apprehensive expression. If he was going to do this, it was now or never. You know, I don't really get what your plan was. Shigaraki taunted. But I think it's safe to say that, WHRRTSCHZZTSCHZZ. Suddenly, Shigaraki was cut off when the Volkswagen's whole roof suddenly popped up like it was on a hinge, much to his surprise. Wait, what? But then, he noticed that the blonde was holding a sword in his hand, and he was positioned directly above Nomu's exposed brain. No, Nomu, get out of. Snicked. Too late. Jumping as hard as he could from his driver's seat, Bumblebee's holoform lunged at Nomu and stabbed Kyoka's katana directly into its brain, causing it to let out a scream of agony. B's holoform landed on the ground as Nomu began thrashing about, the blonde watching as the beast tossed his real body away. B clenched his teeth as his vehicle mode clattered to the ground, having to resist the urge to transform. But then, he had to get out of the way just as fast to avoid Nomu as it began rampaging mindlessly. No, no, my Nomu, Shigaraki shouted indignantly. What have you done? B was about to turn to Shigaraki, only to be met with Kurogiri directly in front of him. You will pay for your insolence, boy. The dark void bellowed as his yellow eyes glared at B. I will see to it personally that your death will be agonizing. Kurogiri lunged at B and shouted, "Be gone," before engulfing him into his body, only to find that the blonde was still standing where he was. What? No, that's impossible. How did my warp gate not work? That was a question that Bumblebee wasn't even sure of himself, his eyes going to his hands in utter surprise. What did I tell you, Kurogiri? Shigaraki shouted as he began to make his own advance onto B. If you want something done right, he reached out and clawed at Bumblebee's face, making sure all 5 of his fingers were on him. You do it yourself, but nothing happened. His decay quirk wasn't having any effect on the blonde at all. What? How is this? Crack. Ah. Shigaraki cried out as Bumblebee kneed the man right in the crotch, following it up with a right hook to the face, which took off the severed hand that was covering it. Shigaraki was sent sprawling face first into the ground, covering his face desperately. Meanwhile, back with Izuku, Kyoka and Momo, the trio were watching on in utter bafflement as the scene played out before them. Bumblebee was taking on the 3 big players of the League of Villains by himself, and he was actually winning. Did I take crazy pills this morning? Kyoka exclaimed. What the heck is going on? I must say, the idea he had of stabbing Nomu in the head was ingenious. Momo commended. But, how is he not being affected by any of their quirks? It was then that Izuku remembered what had happened a few weeks back, during the confrontation that B and Katsuki had outside of Alderat Junior High. The brunette gasped as he recalled how the Ashen Blonde's explosion didn't affect B at all, and this caused Izuku to smile. Because it's not B they're attacking. Kyoka and Momo turned to Izuku for an explanation. It's his holoform that they're going after, and since it's made out of hard light. Kyoka brightened up and let out a laugh. Their emitter-type quirks can't touch him. But then, at that moment, Nomu came back into the picture, the beast roaring as it charged directly at Bee's holoform. Oh, but I bet that can. Bumblebee's eyes widened as the monster raised its fists above its head, the blade still lodged in its brain. Bee covered his arms over his head in preparation for a hit, but it never came. Instead, he felt a very cold sensation come over him as he heard the cracking of ice toward his right side. He opened his eyes, and saw that Nomu was now stuck in place, its left leg and arm encased in ice as the rest of its body continued to thrash. You there? Bee turned around and was met with a certain monochromatic boy with half and half white and red hair, a burn mark running over his blue eye. If he remembered correctly, his name was Shoto Todoroki. You're All Might's intern, right? What are you doing here? Todoroki. Izuku shouted out, garnering both of their attention. Where did you come from? I came as soon as I heard that these idiots wanted to kill All Might. Shoto explained. And from where I stand, it seems I got here just in time. But then, Kurogiri suddenly appeared before them again, and judging by his glare, he was not happy. Indeed, in time for your demise. He was about to lunge at them again, until... Die. The familiar voice immediately put everyone on edge, and the explosion that followed it up didn't help much either. Indeed, from seemingly out of nowhere, Katsuki Bakugo had come in and actually managed to blindside Kurogiri with a blast from his hand, slamming it down on the portal villain's metal brace so that he could take him down to the ground. HA. I knew there had to be some kind of body in there somewhere. It was then that he took notice of the blonde before him, his eyes narrowing instantly. Hey, wait a minute. You're Deku's shitty bodyguard. The fuck are you doing here? Izuku's eyes widened and he swallowed nervously. Oh no. Kyoka rolled her eyes and smacked her forehead. Oh great, here we go. Hey, guys. Everyone perked up and turned around, seeing that Eijiro was running over to them as well. Thank God we found ya. Bakugo and I got into some serious scraps, but we managed to take care of all those thugs. Kirishima, good to see you're okay. Momo said with a nod. Now that we're all together, though, she craned her head over toward the fountain, seeing the broken form of their homeroom teacher still lying there. We need to find a way to get Mr. Aizawa out of there. Eijiro Winston sucked in a sharp breath at seeing just how bad Aizawa's state was. Oh god, we need to get him out now. Grog. All of a sudden, a shrill roar brought everyone's attention back to Nomu, who had managed to thrash its way out of the ice, or at least a part of it did. Its left side was almost completely broken off, causing everyone to gasp. But what took them by surprise even more, was that its body was starting to regenerate itself at an accelerated rate. It wasn't particularly fast, but it wasn't slow, either. Okay, that's fucked beyond belief. Katsuki commented. Shigaraki quickly took notice of Nomu's regeneration speed, having recovered and retrieved his hand mask. Damn it. That sword in his head is causing him to focus his regeneration quirk mostly on that area instead of the rest of his body. But even then, his brain isn't going to be able to heal properly if it stays in like that. He put the severed hand back on his face and focused directly onto Bumblebee, Shoto and Katsuki, his eyes narrowing in rage. You insipid children are going to pay. He went to rush at the three, intending to make them all decay. But then, boom. From the front entrance, the door suddenly blew open, a thick cloud of dust being kicked up as a result. Everyone's attention went directly up toward the steps as they heard footfalls enter the building. And then, they heard a familiar voice, one that gave them all hope. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone wrong when Aizawa and 13 didn't return my calls. Everyone let out breaths of relief as they saw the figure of their savior walk up to the top of the steps, holding his bright yellow school jacket in one hand. So I hurried over, running into young Iida along the way. He told me of the villainy at work here. Fear not, students. With one final, powerful step, All Might reached up and tore off his blue tie, a rather vicious expression on his face. Because I am here. The air was still as the students all basked in the hope that they were feeling, some even letting out tears of joy. Izuku, however, was staring up at All Might in concern. Earlier, when they had first arrived at the USJ, 13 had held up 3 fingers when they told Aizawa that All Might would be late, indicating that he had used up his 3-hour time limit. Which meant that, All Might was running on fumes. All Might, this is bad. Well, This just got interesting. Shigeruki commented. The heroic piece of trash is finally here. Kurogiri. At that moment, the portal villain began to manipulate his fog-like body so that it writhed wildly, causing Katsuki to do a double take. Hey, don't make me, grahhhh. Katsuki snapped his head up, just in time to see Nomu, now fully healed aside from its brain, come charging at him like a rabid animal. Oh, shit, gah. All of a sudden, a strong rush of wind came through the whole area, and in the blink of an eye, Katsuki, Todoroki, Bumblebee's holoform, and even Aizawa were gone. Izuku, Kyoka, Momo and Eijiro weren't all that sure what to think of what happened, until All Might suddenly appeared right at their side, carrying all four of them, and the Volkswagen Beetle on his back. All Might set down Bumblebee's vehicle mode, giving the other four a serious face. Everyone, load up and get out of here. It's far too dangerous to be here with that thing rampaging. Why the fuck am I up here? Katsuki yelled as he jumped off the Beetle's roof. I ain't afraid to fight that thing. Young Bakugo. All Might bellowed, taking the ashen blonde aback. I will have no arguments on this matter. Your lives and Aizawa's are at stake here, and I'll be damned if I let you make such a foolhardy mistake. You all are to get to the exit with Aizawa at once. Do I make myself clear? Katsuki stared wide-eyed at All Might. He had never seen the symbol of peace this serious before, and while it didn't sit well with him, he had to admit, he had a good reason to be. The explosion quirk user glanced off to the side, seeing Shoto and Eijiro helping. Brian, get Aizawa off the roof of the car. Yeah, sure. Good. All Might said as Bumblebee opened the trunk at the front of his vehicle mode, with Eijiro and Shoto gently setting the man down in it as they climbed in as well. I'm sorry, Aizawa. I should have been here. He glanced over to Bumblebee as Momo and Kyoka piled into the Beetle, with Izuku standing next to the blonde holoform. And Brian, the fact that you were able to get here before me is both impressive on your part and embarrassing on mine. I promise, I will not fail any of you. Now get back to the entrance. Aizawa doesn't have much time. Bumblebee gave a salute and went to the driver's seat, with Izuku lingering a few moments more. All Might, that thing, they said that it was made specifically to kill you. And we both know that you're not. Young Midoriya, All Might said before putting his signature smile back on, giving a peace sign all the while. Don't worry, I've got this. Izuku pursed his lips and nodded, though he was still very unsure about all of this. With that, he entered the back seat of the Beetle, with Katsuki having taken the passenger seat up front, much to Bumblebee's chagrin. Shoto and Eijiro were sitting in the still open trunk, keeping Aizawa's body secure as they began to drive off. And with that, All Might was left by himself, facing the rampaging Nomu that was heading right for him. Alright, big guy, so you were meant to kill me. Well, let's see if you can live up to that. All Might lunged forward with his fist at the ready, preparing for an all-out brawl. So much for avoiding Bakugo, huh? Kyoka muttered as she glared at Katsuki from the back seat, making sure that she and Izuku were close enough so only they could hear what they were saying. I mean, this is pretty much the exact opposite of that. Izuku nodded sheepishly. I know. But hey, at least he isn't trying any. Hey, Deku. Katsuki shouted, causing Izuku to flinch. So what's your stupid bodyguard even doing here? And how'd he get all the way to the USJ in his car? But Kyoka interjected before Izuku could answer. If you must know, asshat, we managed to contact him. She pulled out her tracer to show Katsuki. We've got a special tracer that lets him know where we are if we're in trouble and we need him, so we activated them and he came to us. B nodded affirmatively and Katsuki scoffed. PFF'd, K, so how'd he get in here, huh? Believe it or not, he actually broke through the outside wall with his car. Momo jumped in, met us right at the mountain zone. Katsuki furrowed his brows at that. The hell is this car made of? But then he waved his hand. Bah, never mind, I don't care. Kyoka grimaced right back at Katsuki. Of course not, you probably don't care about anything. What I wanna know is how the hell we're gonna get up those steps. Katsuki continued, making everyone else in the car go, huh? The trio of teens all peeked their heads out the back window, before realizing that the steps for the entryway were indeed in their way. Gah, shit, Kyoka exclaimed. Now what do we do? Momo asked. However, Katsuki groaned and rolled his eyes. Hold on, I've got a fucking idea. All of a sudden, Katsuki began to climb right out of the passenger side window, taking everyone by surprise. Kei-ka-chan. Izuku started. What are you? Just shut the hell up, Deku. Katsuki shouted as he readied his single grenade gauntlet, making sure that he was securely holding onto the roof of the Beetle. I know what the fuck I'm doing. He peered over the hood of the car and glared down at Shoto. Hey, I see hot. Make a ramp for us up those steps or else we ain't gonna make it. And then, all of you had better hold onto your asses. Shoto furrowed his brow in confusion, but found that it probably wasn't best to argue with Bakugo at the moment. Sure, whatever. The half-and-half boy powered up his right side and reached his hand down mere inches over the speeding ground below, sending a wave of ice over to the steps to make it into an ice ramp. It's done. Good. Now get ready. Katsuki crawled over toward the back of the Beetle and locked his feet onto the rear bumper, leaning on his back as he reached for the pin of his gauntlet. Alright, extras, fire in the hole. With that, Katsuki pulled the pin and sent a powerful blast out behind the car, sending it blasting forward in a burst of speed. Even Bumblebee was surprised that he was going this fast. Inside of the car and in the trunk, all 5 teens felt themselves get pulled backward as the holoform in front kept his hands on the wheel, focusing as they all shot right up the ramp. In the end, the Beetle jumped off the ground before practically flying all the way to the front entrance, going right over everyone else's heads before landing on all 4 tires and skidding to a stop. Everyone inside of the Beetle was utterly strained at what just happened, with Momo's hair looking particularly frazzled. Are we on the ground? She asked. I think so. Izuku muttered, only now realizing that Kyoka had her arms wrapped around him again, the girl appearing rather worse for wear. Kyoka, are you okay? I am going to strangle Bakugo with his own gauntlet. The perplet muttered. Okay, yeah, you're fine. Izuku smiled, with Kyoka giving him a narrowed-eyed look. What? I learned it from you. That got Kyoka to smile again. Alright, Green Bean, you get a point. Katsuki laughed like a crazy person who just got down from a sugar high, stumbling as he stepped down from the back of the car. Ha ha ha, like I said before, these gauntlets are fucking fantastic. ZRKT, hey. Katsuki's eyes widened and his head spun around, only to see a red-eyed Bumblebee glaring back at him, the blonde holoform looking none too pleased. ZRKT, could ya do me a solid and, ZRKT, never do that again. The explosive blonde, however, didn't take too kindly to that either. Hey, if I hadn't done that, we'd still be sitting ducks down there. Besides, it's not like I wrecked your junker of a car, idiot. ZRKT, junker. B clenched his teeth and went to open his door. ZRKT, why I oughta. Guys. B stopped himself as the group turned to see Ochako and Keita come running up to them, the 2 girls quite relieved. The brunette leaned into one of the windows and gave them all a smile. Haha, you guys made it back. But, where did Brian come from? Kyoka, Izuku and Momo all climbed out of the car, with Shoto and Eijiro carrying Aizawa out from the trunk. Long story. Right now, we've got more important stuff to deal with. Keita, Ochako and everyone else gasped at the sight of their homeroom teacher's broken form. Mr. Aizawa. The gray-skinned girl shouted. Is he dead? No. Momo said as she spread open her costume stomach area a little bit, creating a stretcher that clattered to the floor. But we need to get him out of here and have emergency services take him as soon as they get here. Boys. Eijiro and Shoto immediately set Aizawa down onto the stretcher and they picked it up, taking him outside with Bakugo walking out after them. Where's 13? We heard they were badly injured. Sue and Mina took them outside already. Keita explained. They're waiting for an ambulance now. Ochako gave her friends a bright smile. We were just waiting to make sure that you guys got out of there. She punched the air victoriously. And now we don't have anything to worry about, because All Might's going to kick that thing's behind. Izuku let out a nervous laugh. Hee, why yeah, his gaze shifted back over to where the battle was taking place, his concern for his mentor still weighing heavily on his mind. At least, I hope he will. Izuku. The brunette turned his head to see Kyoka, the girl jabbing her thumb to the exit. He saw that all of their classmates were beginning to file out, with Bumblebee rolling after them. We should get going. The purplet pursed her lips as she Izuku give her a nod, but then set his eyes back down to the battle. Izuku Midoriya, if you do what I think you're going to do. And no, I'm not. Izuku assured. I kinda wanted to watch. Is this the nerd side of you talking, or the mentee side? A little bit of both, actually. Izuku said with his brows furrowing. Though mostly, I'm worried about how this fight might go down. All Might had to admit, this was one tough opponent. Not only for the fact that the beast was still swinging wildly since its brain was still overclocking due to the sword in its head, but also because it wasn't registering any of the hits he made on it. Gotta say, big guy, you've got a little pep in your step. All Might quipped as he continued to sock Nomu in the face, chest, arms and even legs. It doesn't matter where I hit you, now does it? Off to the side, Shigaraki spread his arms out. That's because one of Nomu's quirks is shock absorption, All Might. Even if he's out of my control, he's still got all of his powers and his naturally enhanced strength. A small chortle escaped the man's lips. The only way you could possibly hurt him is by gouging out his flesh, but since he also has super regeneration, he probably won't let you do that. Oh yeah, well let's see what happens when I do this. All Might reached up and grabbed onto the katana's handle, yanking it downward with enough force to pull Nomu down and take the blade out of its head. Nomu screamed in agony and stumbled to the ground, its hands clutching its exposed cranium as the brain finally started to slowly regenerate. However, there had already been so much damage caused that it was very apparent that the gray matter wasn't healing properly, and it was made all the more apparent when Nomu laid its eyes on Shigaraki. Nomu, don't you, brah. Nomu belted out a roar and rushed straight for Shigaraki, the decay quirk user jumping out of the way just before Nomu could grab him. Then, from right out of nowhere, All Might ran up and wrapped his arms around Nomu's midsection. Sorry, but I think it's time to put you down for good. With that, All Might performed a massive suplex, slamming Nomu head first into the ground with so much force that it caused the earth to shake violently. Off to the side, Shigaraki breathed hard as he stood up, with Kurogiri appearing directly next to him. Tamura Shigaraki, it's very apparent that the Nomu has lost all sense of self-control. Should we take our leave? No, not yet. But take us to a safe distance so we can watch this go down. Shigaraki answered. Given how fast I saw him move earlier, I think our sources are correct, All Might is getting weaker. This should be a fun show. Kurogiri made a dark portal and Fu Duo stepped through it, bringing them up to the top of one of the buildings in the ruins zone so they could observe the fight. What? No. All Might attempted to stop the duo from going into the portal, but before he could, Nomu came back and charged directly at him, slamming its arm into him with great force. The blow knocked All Might back several feet, making him skid across the ground before he slowed himself to a half. The number one hero grit his teeth and clenched his fists, glowering as his opponent charged at him. His mind, or whatever was his mind, has lost complete control. All Might thought to himself as he continued to avoid Nomu's hits, bobbing and weaving as he continued to land his own strikes. It's like he doesn't even care that I'm hitting him. He attacks without rhyme or reason, like he's a rampaging animal. All Might performed a mid-air flip over Nomu's head, landing a fair distance away. And I have a limited amount of time in this form, but even so, I have to stop this monster. Because I am, in All Might's mind, the colors of One for All began to glow brighter and brighter, and he could feel his strength begin to increase as he pushed his power over 100%. The world's symbol of peace and justice. With that reinforcing thought, All Might surged forward and balled his fists, ready to engage with Nomu once more. The beast bounded for him and raised its own fists to start throwing its own wild punches, though they didn't have any coordination to their attack. In addition, it was obvious that Nomu was beginning to slow down, the brain damage having taken its toll. Meanwhile, All Might was calculating his punches while pushing himself over his limit, causing them all to hit rapidly and in specific parts of Nomu's body. Slowly but surely, All Might was whittling away at Nomu. He said your quirk was shock absorption, not nullification. All Might proclaimed, as he kept pummeling the creature. That means that you probably have a limit to what you can take. However, just as he said that, Nomu got in a lucky hit, punching All Might right in the gut, connecting to his massive scar on his stomach. The symbol of peace coughed up a bit of blood, but didn't back down, the hit instead only pushing him to go further and further with his attack. You may have been made to fight me, but if you can withstand me at 100%, then I'll have to go beyond that and force you to surrender. All Might's punches became lightning fast, almost unseen to the naked eye. As a result, Nomu began to be pushed further back as the ground began to cave in beneath them. With one more punch, this one with just the tiniest bit more oomph behind it, All Might sent Nomu flying backward, the beast smashing through the central fountain before landing on all fours, frantically charging back toward All Might as it roared in challenge, pulling its fist back for another punch. The number 1 hero leapt directly at Nomu and blocked the hit by crossing his arms, pushing Nomu back while the two combatants flipped through the air. A real hero, All Might grabbed Nomu's arm and began spinning himself around. We'll always find a way for justice to be served. He tossed Nomu directly into the earth below, resulting in a massive crater where Nomu came crashing down directly on top of its head, resulting in the beast giving a pained shriek. All Might landed on his hands and knees, his smile wide and one for all practically burning inside of him. And now, for a lesson. You may not understand these words, beast, but allow me to show you what they truly mean. All Might clenched his fist and reared it back, resulting in a gust of wind whirling around it. Go beyond. He threw his fist forward and shouted at the top of his lungs, plus, crash. UULLLTRRAAAAA. All Might's voice echoed throughout the entire USJ as his fist collided with Nomu, causing a massive explosion before the force of the hit made the beast fly directly up into the air. Nomu shot through the massive dome, just managing to narrowly avoid a certain femme who was observing the battle. Windblade's jaw had been on the floor throughout the entire fight, the city speaker unable to comprehend just what she was seeing. How in the world could one organic being be this strong? Out of all the alien races she had encountered, none could even compare to the strength that this, All Might, had exhibited. She was even positive that there couldn't be a single Cybertronian who could match that level of strength. And the moment that solidified that thinking was when All Might punched the monster so hard that it was sent careening up through the dome, and almost hit her head as a result. She managed to narrowly avoid it, though, ducking just in time. However, as she watched the limp creature go crashing down somewhere in the forest, Windblade couldn't help but say to herself, Optimus, just what kind of a crazy planet did you end up sending us to? The warrior femme glanced back down into the USJ, where she saw Izuku come running up to All Might. All Might, Izuku shouted before coming to a halt, seeing the number 1 hero in a cloud of steam. He could only assume it was from how much intensity All Might was putting into the fight, but Izuku could also see wafts of steam coming off of the hero himself, indicating that it wouldn't be long before he reverted into his true form. The Quirk inheritor stepped up to his mentor, extending a hand. Are you alright, All Might? I suppose I am getting up there in years. All Might mused to himself, the symbol of peace still in mid-pose. Back in my heyday, it would have taken only 5 hits to take that beast down. All Might stood tall and placed a hand over his chest, his smile ever present even with the multiple bruises over his body, his hair unkempt and his mouth trickling with blood. But today, it took over 300 mighty blows. Izuku smiled and let out a sigh. You have no idea how happy I am that you're okay. All Might threw his head back and laughed. Young Midoriya, you worry too much. Like I said, I had it handled. Speaking of, All Might craned his head over toward the ruins zone, where Shigaraki and Kurogiri were still observing. So, are you going to come down to try and finish this? The duo saw Shigaraki turn to Kurogiri, the two discussing something before they both suddenly disappeared. They're getting away. Izuku exclaimed as he began to run forward. Young Midoriya, there's nothing we can do now. Izuku's eyes widened and he turned to see All Might, the pro-hero beginning to slowly revert back into his true form, currently appearing as a strange mixture of both. My time's been spent, Toshinori said as he took in deep breaths. Even if we were to go after them, I probably would have popped out of my muscle form the instant I tried to move. The man gave Izuku one more grin. Besides, you kids are all safe and Aizawa and 13 are still alive, so this definitely wasn't a loss. A heavy blow, yes, but not a loss. Izuku's expression fell slightly, but he knew that to be true. There was no way All Might could keep going after pushing past his 3-hour limit and having gone up against Nomu. The brunette nodded and accepted. Why yeah, right, his eyes drifted around a little before catching sight of something above them, causing him to move his gaze upward. Izuku smiled and let out a small laugh. And I almost forgot to tell you, we have a visitor. The boy pointed up and Toshinori turned around, and his blue eyes widened at what he saw. There, standing at the very edge of the glass dome, was a red and black winged robot with a feminine figure, her head resembling that of a kabuki mask. Izuku stepped up next to his mentor and waved his hand up to her. All Might, that's Windblade. She's one of Bumblebee's friends who just arrived on Earth, and she's already helped us in a big way. The femme met Toshinori's eyes and gave a small smile, saluting to him before transforming into her jet mode, blasting away up into the sky. Toshinori let out a small chuckle at that. Hey, well what you know. Bee really does have more friends out there. The walking skeleton of a man turned back to his student and asked, I suppose we'll be seeing more of her soon. But then, he cut himself off, his eyes bugging out again as his sights moved past Izuku. All Might, what's, Izuku gasped as he turned around, his gut and heart sinking in his chest at who he was seeing storming up toward them. Izuku Midoriya, Kyoka exclaimed as she sent a soft glare Izuku's way. I thought we agreed we'd all be waiting outside for the teachers, too, but then, Kyoka trailed off, seeing the decrepit blonde man standing behind her best friend. The man was virtually unrecognizable to her, that is, if she wasn't aware of the only other blonde man that had been in here during the last 5 minutes. No, he looked nothing like him, but the fact that she had seen Izuku talking to him so casually like he already knew him, she could only come to one conclusion, her voice shaking in shock as she spoke. All Might. And it's the end of part 6 of this What If. I hope you guys like it. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.